Let's do it.
Do it.
Let's do it. Let's do it. So welcome everyone. Thank you for dialing into this webinar today. This is hosted by Antler. We're super pleased to host this event where we'll be exploring the insights on the risks of cyber attacks with the best guy to do it, Tin. We will talk today about how SMBs can implement solutions. We'll also talk start a little bit high level with cybersecurity, just to get everyone an update on the latest and greatest. And then at the end of our session, we'll have Q&A, so you can drop your questions in the chat box. And then before that, we'll also touch a little bit about the big name Vietnamese Sky Mavis Axie Infinity. What really happened? Tin is one of the advisors that was brought in to advise them on how to prevent similar attacks in the future. So we'll be hearing some insights from him on that. For those who don't know, Antler, we're a early stage global research VC. We invest in exceptional people specializing in pre-seed and seed stage investing. And I'm super pleased to moderate this event. Tin Nguyen is co-founder and CEO of Polaris InfoSec. He's an ex-FBI agent and advisor now to Sky Mavis Axie Infinity after the recent cyber attack. Yeah, I think this is going to be an amazing session, and super excited. Yeah, so let's do it, Tin. So good to have you here, man. So you were in the United States Marine Corps, you're in the FBI, you worked in a SWAT unit, and then traversed over to startup life as a co-founder of a cybersecurity firm. So to me, it feels like protecting and serving obviously runs really deep in your persona. So I would love for everyone to kind of understand your journey and ultimately what makes you passionate about keeping people safe and secure.
Sure. Thanks, Erik and the Antler team, for having me today. You know, the whole aspect of service has been important to me growing up. Purely, I think it stems from being an immigrant family to the United States. So, you know, I'm Viet Kieu. So I've come back to Vietnam after serving in the military and FBI, purely because that's where I derive purpose and drive from. You know, people find their purpose in all sorts of things in life. And so for me, it was about that direct impact that I could have on people when I'm doing something such as a mission. Yeah, and so whether that was as a military officer or as an FBI agent, it was about having that immediate impact and having, you know, seeing the reaction from people when you help them. And so jumping over to cybersecurity, it's the same thing, right? It's ultimately the same thing. It's providing people with some kind of assistance, because what really irks me and bothers me is people taking advantage of others. Whether it's in wartime, whether it's in the FBI, or whether it's through cybersecurity, it boils down to there's someone out there that is looking to do harm unto others, that is trying to take advantage of their situation. And so for me, it's about how do I help the community, help those that may not know how to protect themselves.
Wow. Tell us just a quick story from wartime or for FBI. I know you were in a SWAT team in Los Angeles as well. Anything you can share with us to give us a little bit of insights on the stuff you've been going through?
Sure. So, you know, as an FBI agent, I worked several types of violations. And so I did counterterrorism for several years, and then I did violent gangs for several years. There is a gang called MS-13, which is it's one of the largest gangs in the United States, but one of the most notorious gangs globally as well. So I was the lead case agent for MS-13 out of Los Angeles. These guys are nasty people. And so the last case that I worked as an agent was on a group of young people called youngsters, aptly named because they were ages 13 to 22 years old. And so these gangsters were going around killing people, murdering them, dismembering them, and then discarding their remains in the forests above in northern Los Angeles, right? And so this is the type of violence that exists in the world. And so my investigation was in how to basically capture these guys, right? Because they're young. They don't have a lot of criminal history that you can trace down. They're very transient. They're moving from home to home. They're also not American citizens. So it's not like they have ties to the community, right? And so how do you protect the community from people like this? Yeah, it's very difficult, but to make a long story short, we were able to identify a lot of key leaders and make some key arrests prior to my leaving the FBI.
Amazing, well done. And for how many years were you in FBI, Tin?
Just a little over 7 years, yeah.
7 years, wow, amazing. So traversing over to cybersecurity. So again, protecting the servers, but in a different context, a different format. So I think cybersecurity is something everyone has heard about and know a little bit of, but maybe let's just kind of define it again. So what you like cybersecurity in general terms, what exactly is it?
Yeah, so before we define cybersecurity specifically, we need to understand that within the tech world specifically, there's a lot of differences. Just because you know tech doesn't mean you know security. There's a big difference between information technology, IT, right? The little teams in your office that help fix your network when your Wi-Fi is down, or help architect your network. Big difference between them. Big difference between development teams who are the software engineers that create platforms, create applications, and then cybersecurity. So cybersecurity, very, very simply, is how do you defend all of those assets? How do you defend your digital assets, your systems, your infrastructure from exploitation, from bad guys that are looking to take advantage of you?
Right. And so talking about that, right? So you mentioned you can understand, not necessarily understanding cybersecurity if you understand tech. So what are some of the biggest misconceptions about cybersecurity? Is it like you buy a McAfee antivirus program and you're set for life, or what's some of the misconceptions here?
Yeah, so that's funny you bring that up because that is something that people think, oh, I have antivirus, so I'm good. Far from the truth, right? People generally think that one, cybersecurity is only for big companies. False, okay? Two, they think it's too complicated, which it can be, but you just need to find where it's, to find resources that make it easier for you. Three, they think it's too expensive. Also false, right? And then four, I would say that people think that they don't need it as a small to medium business, which is also wrong, right? And why is that? It's because small, medium businesses are easy targets. Attackers know that they can attack you and you are more than likely not going to have a solution or systems in place to deal with the cyber attack. So if you get hit with ransomware, for example, and they lock all of your systems, and now you don't have access to your customer lists, your functions, your platforms, what are you going to do? You're going to pay them. They're going to pay them 1 or 2 or 3 Bitcoin. And for some people, 1 or 2 Bitcoin, that's 40,000, 80,000 US dollars. May not be a lot, but for some small businesses, that's a huge chunk of their revenue. That could crush you as a business, right? And so as a small, medium enterprise business, you have to think about your security, especially since everything these days is related to tech. All these startups, they have these tech platforms, but how do you protect that, right? As you grow, how do you protect that customer data, that information that you're collecting? How do you protect your customers and partners?
Absolutely. On that note, just as you mentioned it, right? So what is the most common form of I guess hacking in terms of targeting an SME? Is it that you lock their systems, you take the information and then sell it back to them for ransom, or is it that you actually use that potential customer data to monetize in a different way? Can we like, what's the most common one?
So I would say that first off, there's thousands of different types of attacks and variations of attacks in attack vectors, right? So attack vectors is how are they going to exploit your system, right? And then the attack type is what they're using to exploit your system. Some of the most common attack vectors for businesses would be 1, web applications, your website. Yeah. 2 would be email systems, right? Through business email compromises. Social engineering, which is a fancy way of saying they're going to talk to your people and find out information about your company and then exploit that, right? And then also some technological features that systems have these days, such as APIs, the connection points between platforms, right? Because you may think, hey, I'm doing everything I can to secure my platform, but if your partner isn't secure and your connection points to your partner platforms aren't secure, then that doesn't mean your system's secure. Yeah. Attack types, what they can do, like I said, there's literally thousands, but some common ones would be DDoS, which is called distributed denial of service. That's essentially just flooding your website with so much traffic that it either crashes or that it slows. And so it's like you go online and you try to access the website, but it doesn't load, right? So if you think about that as a business, what does that do for your business, right? There's attacks called cross-site scripting, remote code injection, them, typing commands into your website that is able to extract or provide information about your servers, or commands and codes that allow them to speak directly to your servers as if they're sitting there on the server itself. Yeah. We know that phishing is huge. Who gets those emails from the Prince of Nigeria and says, hey, I want to send you $5 million if you just provide me with your confidential information? We laugh about that, but people fall for those every single day. I had a lunch with a friend earlier today, and he fell for a scam for $200 because Shopee, right? He bought something off Shopee, and then he got a fake email back saying that his transaction didn't go through. And so he remitted his transaction through a link in the email, but it wasn't Shopee. And so he lost $200, right? So phishing happens all the time. Compromised credentials through data breaches like LinkedIn, Facebook, other social media. Hackers steal your credentials, your username and password. They leak it onto the web. What happens is now they can use that data and use it across all of your websites, all of your accounts, because guess what? People use the same password for everything, and you use the same email for everything. And so now they're attacking and stealing your data from all these different websites. Yeah. And the last one I'll bring up is ransomware. This one's kind of big in the news, right? Ransomware as a service is huge now. You basically have to just go online and buy this service. Then you can launch ransomware onto someone's platform, and then it locks and encrypts all their data, their systems. And then you can't do anything about it. And then they also say, hey, we're gonna leak all of your confidential data onto the dark web unless you pay me 3 Bitcoin. Right, and so that's hugely popular now.
Wow. You mentioned 2-3 Bitcoins. So is that like the standard price at the moment?
I don't know if I would say that as a standard, but I see that as a common number, purely because it's not so high that people can't pay it. But it also gives them a little wiggle room because people are going to try to negotiate, blah, blah, blah. And so, 3 Bitcoin these days is what, like 120 or so thousand US dollars. It's not so much that a small business can't pay it. But if there's negotiation that takes place, they have wiggle room to say, okay, instead of 3 Bitcoin, you only pay 2 Bitcoin. And then psychologically, companies are more willing to pay 80,000 US dollars.
Right. It's funny you should mention DDoS attacks. I was the target for one when I was running Zalora back in 2014. And as you said, we're e-commerce business. Our website stopped loading, and you're cut off by the head, essentially. If there was no other, you could essentially call customer service if you wanted to place an order, but we also use our website to do those internal orders. So yeah, for an e-commerce business, we were super vulnerable. And so that was back in 2014. And I think one of the solutions, the implementations we had from our central IT system in Berlin was Cloudflare. So I think that was one tool that I think we didn't use before that, but we started using after that. So are these service providers becoming more and more common to prevent from simple attacks like that? Or how do you see that landscape?
Yeah, so there's been cybersecurity providers for years now. It's a matter of whether people use them. And so that's why one of the purposes of this seminar, this webinar, is education and awareness. Especially within the Southeast Asian market, people are just not educated as to why they need cybersecurity, which is why Vietnam is one of the most attacked countries right now globally, right? It normally ranks in like the top 10, right? Sometimes in the top 5 in terms of being hacked. Why? It's not because there's a lot of sexy information in Vietnam that people just want to steal. It's because it's just so easy to do. Yeah. And so it's a matter of convincing and educating people as to why they need these solutions, right? And how they can build it into their companies starting very, very young. Yeah. So the landscape is slowly changing. There's a lot of tech startups in Vietnam and Southeast Asia. And so now we got to educate, hey guys, you have an amazing platform. You have an amazing tool that is going to be an amazing resource for people to use. But now how do you protect your customers' data? How do you protect your tools so that people can't take advantage of you and your systems?
So what's the difference between the tech startup scene in Vietnam that makes it so easy to hack vis-a-vis Silicon Valley or Singapore or Berlin or Oslo? Is it a culture thing that people just don't focus on it too early enough, or what do you think that is?
I think it's just a matter of time. I think technologically, countries like Vietnam are very talented. It's just that there is just not as many, right? And so technologically, Vietnam is catching up very, very quickly in terms of just reputation, brands, and skill level. And so, like I said, we are still at the very, very forefront of educating people about cybersecurity and its needs. It's just, we just gotta be patient.
Got it. Okay, so let's say I'm a startup. I'm using the full Google suite of products, Gmail as an email, as an ESP, using a bulge bracket name like that for all my docs, everything. How protected am I, or unprotected am I?
So usually if you guys are using systems such as Google as a startup, Google itself, it's a big name. So they have systems in place for security, internal practices, how they build their platform so that you can use it in a secure manner. The biggest problem though is not Google. It's you, the user. It's me, the user. Okay. There are certain things that you can turn on, for instance, multi-factor authentication. Everyone knows what it is. Sometimes they call it 2FA, right? Having a secondary source to authenticate you logging in. Multi-factor authentication is something that everyone should be using, but people don't use it. Why? They're lazy. It's inconvenient. It's an annoyance. They don't want to have to type in their password and then also check an app on their phone for that special digit, or wait for a text message with the special code, right? Because it's annoying. I feel the same way. I think it's annoying, but we can't be lazy with security. The whole purpose of security is to make things tough for the bad guys, which sometimes makes it tough for us. But Google platforms allow multi-factor authentication, allows you to have customized roles and privileges. Something that should be practiced by companies is something called the principle of least privilege. So the principle of least privilege is only provisioning access to systems for those that absolutely need it for their work, right? So even as the CEO of a company, right, I don't need access to everything. So my developers, they may be using GitHub or other resources to do their work, but if I don't need access to it, they're not going to give me access to it, because that just makes the attack vector a little larger, right? So roles and privileges should be limited, right? If you're using Google Drive to share documents with outside parties, that's easy, right? Okay, I'm talking to Erik from Antler. He wants to take a look at that we're building. I'm going to share it with you, but what systems and policies do you have to make sure that I remove that access once it's done? That's the tough part. The humans are always the weakest point in cybersecurity. We're horrible. People are horrible, okay? The technology is great, but if we don't use it in the right way, then guess what? Hacked.
Right. So it comes down to the human factor. We're the weak link. Technology is not the weak link, it's us.
Right.
Okay, so Polaris, is then a lot of the advice you guys give just protocols and processes as opposed to specific implementation of various platforms and SaaS tools?
Yeah, so Polaris itself, as a cybersecurity company, and any of the cybersecurity brothers and sisters in this chat room with me, the thing that we need to focus on the most is education and awareness, because that's going to take us much further than any technological solution will ever take us, right? So education and awareness is absolutely vital. I actually see my friend Ethan in here. He runs the Center for Security, for Cybersecurity Services, which is an education tool, and system out of Singapore, but he focuses on education. So shout out to my buddy, Ethan. You can thank me later, buddy. So he's an education arm, because they realize that education is the most important aspect of cybersecurity in order for you to know how to utilize those solutions. So Polaris itself, we have this web application protection platform, right, that will protect your web domain from the most common attacks, and we'll also protect your APIs with your third-party vendors. However, what we also do is we also provide guidance for companies on how they can prepare for cyber incidents. What you can do for policies, processes, what technological solutions, whether it's my platform or not, that you can integrate. And then if something happens, we can help you remediate. We can do that incident response for you. For companies that may be involved in fintech or finance, things that you need to think about are PCI DSS certifications. Other tech companies, you need to think about ISO 27001. If you do business with the EU, with Europe, you need to think about GDPR certifications, right? So we advise and help prepare companies for all those sorts of things.
Okay, that's interesting. And let's say I have a cybersecurity solution implemented. Am I 100% protected, or is there always a small percentage that of risk that either human factor or something else that will allow breaches of various data sources and whatnot?
Never. If there's any cybersecurity company that tells you that they can protect you 100%, they're lying. Okay.
Right.
But I would be remiss if I didn't say that cybersecurity professionals know not to say that. Yeah, because it's not true. We could never protect it. Even companies like Google, Facebook, the major conglomerates, Amazon, they have incredible cybersecurity resources and cybersecurity teams, but they themselves still get hacked because you cannot protect 100%. Right? There are just too many attack vectors and types of attacks, and it's constantly evolving. You could solve 10 today, and then tomorrow there's gonna be another 20. There's gonna be another 30. That's why it's so important that you control what you can control, which is 1, training your team members, 2, implementing technical solutions to reduce the risk, because it's about risk management. And then also you got to think about things such as holding your partners to a standard, because you may have all the security policies, you may have all of the solutions in place, but you do business with someone that is sloppy, that doesn't have those solutions, guess what? You're still at risk. So something that's very common these days is having in your contracts with partners, mandating that partners have certain cybersecurity solutions or training involved or in their programs.
Got it. Interesting. So you mentioned before, Vietnam is one of the top 10 countries that always gets attacked. What about the list of attackers? What are we talking the traditional names that you see in action movies, Russian hackers, Chinese hackers, North Korean hackers, or are there other countries that are on the list that we just don't suspect?
So when you're talking about hackers specifically, you're talking about all sorts of levels, because you have young junior hackers that you call script kiddies that are just hacking for fun. And then you have hackers that go all the way up through organized crime in state-sponsored units called APTs, Advanced Persistent Threats. The APTs are always generally going to be your most dangerous. Not to say they always are the most dangerous, because there are individual hackers that are extremely dangerous as well. But generally, because these APTs are state-sponsored, they have resources that are provided to them by the government, right? And so they're very organized. It's not just guys sitting in a room behind computers that are hacking. They have people on the ground in the community doing social engineering, calling companies, manipulating companies, doing social media messaging, right? So it's a very complicated criminal organization and network. It is like the movies, okay? It is like the movies. And so people don't really think about that. They think it's just one person in a room, typing on a computer, but it's much more than that. Yeah. And so in terms of Vietnam sees the whole gamut, right? Everything from individual hackers all the way through APTs. And Vietnam itself also has an APT.
Really? Okay, interesting. So I think last question before we jump into a little bit the Axie Ronin hack. For a small enterprise or startup, how much do you spend, or how much does it cost to get properly protected?
So when you want to start off on your cybersecurity journey, I'm going to tell you that it costs you $0. So earlier I told you that businesses traditionally think and generally think that cybersecurity is very expensive. It can be expensive and it can be complicated. Don't get me wrong, right? But if you're just starting on your journey, you have to have something scalable, right? There are free solutions out there that are very, very basic. Yeah, that are very, very basic, that will give you at least something to protect yourself. Something is better than nothing. And like I keep going back to, start with your training and education. You need to train your team members on user awareness with real world applications. How each individual function, department within your team can take accountability. You need to teach them about password policies, access policies, even something for HR, for example, job descriptions, how you write your job descriptions. That is a threat to you, because a lot of companies, when they're looking for tech team members, developers, they'll write, hey, we want a person that can do A, B, C, D, E, F, G using this platform, this platform, this platform, this platform. You're giving too much information, because now when hackers are doing their research on your company and they see that, they know, oh, this company uses these tools and resources and they do these processes. And now they know that's intelligence for them. And they do that. They search social media. They search your website, right? They are that extensive. And so There are free and cheap solutions you can implement today, literally today, within minutes. Yeah, like I said, something is better than nothing. And as you scale and grow your business, okay, now we can talk about scaling your security as well. Yeah, Windows Defender or antivirus on your computer is not enough. Those are all passive systems, and they're hackable within minutes. Right? If you guys have trouble with user training and you guys don't know what to do, talk to me. I will come do it for you. Right? No strings attached. I will come to your company and I will hold training for your team and your company. Then what I'll do is I'll give you a presentation that you can then turn into your Antler user awareness training, into your whatever company user training, right? Because like I said, your safety and your protection is the number one priority.
Right. Amazing. Thank you for that, Tin. Cool. So the big topic the last couple of weeks or even months has been the hack on Ronin. So Ronin, I'm sure everyone is aware, but Ethereum's layer 1 was not really built for gaming. So Sky Mavis created this sidechain called Ronin to essentially save gas fees and work with the Axie community in mind. And that was the target for the attack. We have to caveat this discussion a little bit. So Tin is actively engaged advising Sky Mavis, so he cannot divulge all details of the what has happened. But Tin, could you just give an overview how you got involved and really what happened?
Yeah, of course. So thanks, Erik, for that disclaimer. It is an active investigation still, so I can kind of dive into some of the generalities and kind of the steps that we took. And then, actually just today, Sky Mavis published a post-mortem report on some of the things that have happened and some of the people that have been involved in the investigation. So you guys can probably find that online. However, the Polaris team was notified of this incident the day it happened, right? And so they call us and hey, we just lost some money, right? And so we were called in to do triage, root cause analysis, to basically help collect information and determine indicators of compromise, right? Indicators of compromise being just telltale signs of what happened, who did it, what has been done. Yeah. And so because this is such a massive undertaking with so many people involved, different parties from around the globe started reaching out. So you had law enforcement entities from everywhere, every country reaching out. The FBI from the US, for example, yeah. You had investors reaching out. You had all independent resources reaching out, say, hey, we can help, we can help. So how do you manage this flow of information and operations? So that's what we did, is we helped manage the situation. We controlled their information and operational security. We helped manage their PR, right? Because as you publish information to keep your community updated, you got to be sure that you're not giving too much information away that affects the operations and the investigation. Yeah. And then post that, we did the recovery roadmap. Boils down to three things: people, process, and technology. How do you build a roadmap that protects those systems, right? Across government's policy, defensive measures, and solutions, your response. And so we're building out that recovery roadmap to help them. That being said, the Sky Mavis team has been very aggressive with the recovery. They've done everything in their power to first take care of their customer base. That was their top priority, right? 2 is mitigating things immediately, right? To secure their investment, but also their community and their programs and their gaming system. Hats off to the Sky Mavis team, because they've been working overtime since it happened and they haven't stopped. Right.
And you also, so FBI got involved, and you've also managed the relationship with FBI. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And so because of my previous, connection to the Bureau, it's just unique in that I was out here in Vietnam. So it's just kind of a stroke of luck for those guys, I guess. But I know exactly what they think, exactly what they need. And so it just kind of made the process a lot quicker and a lot smoother in terms of the collection of information, getting their investigation started, and kind of pushing the envelope to identify, who is involved, what needs to be done, what still needs to be done, etc.
Right. And it was confirmed fairly quickly, right, that the attack came from North Korea. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it was publicly released probably about 2 weeks ago now that it was North Korea, but we knew the day after it happened who it was. Yeah. So
how did you know?
let's just say the FBI works very quickly.
Okay, got it. Interesting. And it was essentially that, so the hack was through the validators, overloading the validators. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So for those that aren't familiar with blockchain, I'm not going to dive into the weeds, but essentially, in order to withdraw money, you need approval, right? You need approval for this transaction from what they call validator nodes. Yeah, and so there were 9 validator nodes, but you only needed approval from 5 of them. And so basically, what happened was they had some keys that unlock this validator node, right? It unlocks it and authorizes the transaction. They had these keys stolen, which allowed the hackers to unlock the necessary 5, and then now the transaction is authorized, and they were able to extract this money.
Right. Right. It's and how long do you think this investigation will undergo further?
It's going to be a while. These things are not resolved, overnight, purely because, one of the things that, they have to do is make sure that all the doors are closed, all the back doors are closed. One thing that attackers like to do is they like to install back doors so that even after an incident is quote unquote resolved, they can always turn around and come back in and be like, hey, guess what? We're back. Give us more money. Yeah. So it's very, very dangerous. So that's why a major firm such as CrowdStrike is involved, because they are, global experts at this. And so they are coming in and they're taking a look at everything to make sure that all those back doors are closed. Even then, the attackers are good. There are things that could be triggered down the road, down in the future, that could open things back up. But we're doing the best we can to remediate these.
Amazing, I'm sure you are. Okay, hey Tin, why don't we jump into some Q&A? So you've got starting to get some really good questions in the chat box. I'll just start reading them out and we can address them one by one. So we have from Christoph, how to convince companies, whatever the size, the need to address cybersecurity unless they already got attacked. So someone who is not attacked, maybe think they don't really need to do it. What's the kind of go-to-market? How do you convince them?
Yeah, so this is the difficult question that cybersecurity companies in general are trying to solve worldwide, right? Like I said, it starts with education, and we have to be patient. Markets such as the United States are much more advanced. In Southeast Asia, the market is less educated. So it's about showing them value, right? And trying to relate to them on for their specific industry, for their specific business. Because as an example, finance cares about security in a different way than like an F&B company does, right? But you have to be able to relate to them per industry. So you have to identify, hey, per industry, what is the greatest threat to you? And how can they impact your industry today? And how can they impact your team members today? And then once you identify that, it's about showing to them how your specific solution can help mitigate that, right? Obviously, for a company that's already been attacked, it's much different, because they already realize I need this. But I'll be honest with you, there's some companies that get attacked, but then they still don't do anything about it, right?
Right.
So you got to really speak to the decision makers, right? Number one, you have to speak to decision makers and show them value. It's like an insurance policy. People have insurance for their dogs, for their homes. They have insurance policies for earthquakes, floods, but yet you don't have an insurance policy for your company's data, which is the most important asset for a company. Because I'm going to tell you guys something. Once a hacker steals your data, you're not getting that back. You don't get that back. And then when you get that data leaked onto the web, now you have to explain to all your customers, all your partners, what happened. Let's think about the brand reputation, right? What's lost there. Let's think about the financial loss. And this is not something that is felt over a week and then it's over with. It goes on for years, right? Some companies never recover from these things.
Right. And I think on that note as well, I mean, just protecting your data from internally as well, from rogue employees that have been maybe let go and grab everything they can. I've seen that before, unfortunately. So I guess it comes back to those processes that you talked about earlier, how to implement processes that not one single person has access to everything, the protocols, things like that. Interesting. I had another question here that is kind of related to the G Suite question I had for you before. For early stage startups that are storing users' databases in Google Cloud or or Amazon Web Services. Is that safe enough? And if not, what's the best practices to store customers' data?
Yeah, very good question. So I will tell you that nothing is ever safe enough, right? And I'm not just telling you that as a businessman. I'm telling you that as a security guy, your data is never safe enough. When you have something in the cloud, whether it's Google or AWS, I mean, you guys hear these stories, right? Of people's clouds getting hacked and then their information being stolen. For some reason, the most popular one that comes to brain is like celebrities, right? Celebrities get their cloud stolen and then they have, videos and pictures that they probably shouldn't have, or maybe they shouldn't have, get stolen and published on the internet. That stuff happens, right? So if you're a company that uses the cloud, you have to take measures to protect that asset. For cloud providers, there's usually something called a shared responsibility model, right? Depending on what service you're using. But the shared responsibility model is the cloud infrastructure, say it's Amazon, AWS, they take responsibility for security of the cloud, meaning the infrastructure, their physical data centers, the servers. The customer, you, the end user, you take responsibility for what's in the cloud, right? So the data, you have to protect that. Just because it's on the Google Cloud or Amazon Cloud doesn't mean the data is protected. That's why you need things such as web application firewalls, right? You need filtering systems. You need intrusion detection devices, right? There's a million different solutions that you can have to kind of give you awareness of what's going on in your network, so that if someone tries to do something to access your cloud, you can do something about it.
Right. When you're talking, so again, it comes back to that, the human factor, right? I'm not sure if you've seen the clip of Conan where they ask people in the street what their passwords are, and they say, "Oh, it's my dog's name and the year I graduated," and then 3 questions later, they divulge their dog's name and the year they graduated. So,
correct.
Yeah. Anyways, we had another question for Christoph here. What are the most targeted sectors / companies by cyber attack? Is there a kind of S curve there? You see sectors that are more targeted than others?
Yeah, for sure. I will say this: there is no sector that is not attacked. There are no exemptions to this, right? There are no exemptions. However, when you're talking about sectors that are the most attacked these days, you're talking about fintech and finance. That's a no-brainer, right? Because there's financial transactions, financial data, transiting their networks, translating their platforms. Companies are storing this financial data. Healthcare, right? A lot of personal information out there. Data that is, if it's leaked, hey man, that's not really cool. Let's just say it that way. You have e-commerce is big. Why? Once again, e-commerce platforms have all this confidential data, customer portals, customer accounts, addresses, phone numbers, emails, passwords, credit card information. And then you also have government and infrastructure. Why government and infrastructure? Not because they're cool, but because it's services. So if an energy company, for instance, or an internet company gets hacked, and the hackers decide to use ransomware, and now thousands of people are without their internet, what is that internet company going to do? Well, they're probably going to pay that right away, right? Because people need their internet. We freak out when our Wi-Fi doesn't work at the coffee shop. Yeah, so that's why infrastructure, whether it's energy, telecom, government, also gets targeted quite frequently. Right.
Makes total sense. Our friend Vitali online, he has 2-pronged question. The first one, I think we already covered, how you approach SMEs for cybersecurity and selling to them. But secondly, he also said, do you think cybersecurity providers should partner with cyber insurance companies to provide a better protection for SMEs, maybe a wholesale solution?
Yeah, so I think this is something that has growing in commonality, actually, is the partnership with cyber insurance. However, the issue with this is cyber insurance itself is also a concept that is very, very new, and so people don't think about it. Yeah. However, a lot of the larger companies are already doing this. Is they're getting cyber insurance policies, and if you have the ability as a cyber security company to partner with an insurer, that's a no-brainer, because now you can be part of their panel, right, of experts, of solutions. So something happens to somebody, a company, and then they go to their cyber insurance partner and say, hey, cyber insurance, we just got hacked. You have coverage for that, but they also have the ability to provide you with resources, right? So if you are one of the resources, that cyber insurance provider can recommend to their customer, hey, you guys just got hacked. I have this cybersecurity company, cyber company A, that can help you with your issues, can do the incident response. They can help you provide solutions, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a business model that is growing in popularity for sure. The issue is, one, cyber insurance is still not popular. Two, depending on what market you're in, such as Vietnam, there aren't a lot of cyber insurance providers. And three, usually the only ones that use it are the larger companies.
Got it. Okay. Next question, Tin. Thank you for being such a good sport and filling all these questions for us. So Christoph is asking again, you spoke about ISO 27001. What about ISO 22301, security and resilience? So I guess it's an open to like, what about it?
Yeah, so I'll say this about certifications in general. You can go ahead and get a 22301. To be honest with you, in full transparency, I'm not well versed on 22301, just generally. However, the general international standard for information security management services security is 27001. When you guys see 27001 that's stamped on a company web page or their products or their product sheets and saying, hey, we're 27001 certified, that is telling you that they have gone through the auditing process and certification process to become an information security management expert, right? That they have processes and systems in place to manage your data all the way, not just from a technological standpoint, but also from a human standpoint. They have processes and policies in place so that if something happens, they know what to do. They know how to do the incident response. They have a disaster recovery plan. They have a business continuity plan. Yeah. And so the international standard that is generally the most sought after would be the 27001.
Got it. Then one question I've been itching to ask you, how do you manage your own passwords?
Very good. Password manager. I have 1 million accounts. Guys, do not write. I got some of my staff members in this webinar right now, and this is for you all, okay? Do not write your passwords onto a notebook, okay? Leave it on your desk. Do not leave it on WordPad or Microsoft Word doc and leave it on your computer, okay? Because if you get hacked, right, someone gets onto your endpoint, they're gonna steal that and they're gonna have access to everything. Use a password manager. There's 1 million out there. Go to the App Store and type in password manager, download it. It can also help generate new passwords for you so that it's unique, right? And then so when you log into a website, all you need to go is log into your password manager, copy, paste it, boom, right? For passwords, guys, no less than 12 characters. Always use uppercase, lowercase, special characters, and numbers. Mix it up.
Right. Awesome. Then we are right on the dot for the webinar. How do people get a hold of you best?
You guys can get a hold of me on LinkedIn, right? Or just search, I guess, right? But you guys can also email me at tin@polarisec.com. I'm going to type it in here, tin@polarisec.com. Guys, I really mean it. If you guys don't know where to get started on this cybersecurity journey, or if you just want to talk about cybersecurity, right, as professionals, let's do it. Let's grab a coffee or let's jump on a call. I will come to your office and do the training for your team. No strings attached, right? No strings attached. So, I put that out there because, like I said, protection of your team members and of your customers and partners is top priority for all of us.
Amazing. That's an offer I think no one can refuse, right?
Well, let's hope so.
Let's hope so. Amazing. Tin, thank you, and to the whole Polaris team for being such a good sport, getting on this webinar today. Everyone who joined, thank you for dialing in and asking amazing questions. Hopefully it was useful in one way or another. You got some additional information, some update on cybersecurity, learned something. Tin, thank you so much for joining. And the Antler team, thank you for arranging. Such a pleasure to host this. Let's do it again soon.
Thanks, Erik. Thanks, team. Thanks, everybody.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.